Stay tuned for another Newscenter88 presentation on WMUL FM Huntington. And now, the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap, covering the top stories around the globe, tri-state, and across the campus of Marshall University. And now, the Newscenter88 Weekend Recap team.
Welcome to this edition of Newscenter88's Weekend Recap. I'm Emma Johnson.
And I'm John Boggess. Coming up on this edition of Weekend Recap, Israeli forces stormed the main hospital in southern Gaza, saying hostages were likely held there. All on your weekly source for Marshall Broadcast News. Julia McAndrews will be in with this week's weather forecast, and Ben Anderson will be in with a recap of the week that was in Marshall athletics.
Now onto our top story. Police say the shooting that left one person dead and nearly 24 injured after the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade appeared to stem from a dispute between several people. Police Chief Stacey Graves said Thursday that the 22 injured people ranged in age from 8 to 47 years old, with half of them being under the age of 16. Police said they detained 3 people from the shooting, but released one person they determined wasn't involved, leaving 2 juveniles in custody. Investigators are calling for witnesses and victims to call a dedicated hotline. The shooting outside the city's historic Union Station happened despite the presence of more than 800 police officers.
The White House has publicly confirmed that Russia has obtained a troubling emerging anti-satellite weapon, but says it cannot directly cause physical destruction on Earth. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby said Thursday that U.S. intelligence officials have information that Russia has obtained the capability, but that such a weapon is not currently operational. U.S. officials are analyzing the information they have on the emerging technology and have consulted with allies and partners on the matter. In Moscow, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov described the claims about a new Russian military capability as a ruse intended to make the U.S. Congress support aid for Ukraine.
Israeli forces have stormed the main hospital in southern Gaza in what the army says is a search for the remains of hostages taken by Hamas. The raid on Nasser Hospital in Han Yunis came after troops had besieged the facility for nearly a week as hundreds of staff, patients, and others inside struggled under heavy fire and dwindling supplies, food, and water. Separately, Israel launched a second day of airstrikes in southern Lebanon after killing 10 civilians and 3 Hezbollah fighters, just hours after a rocket attack killed an Israeli soldier. Negotiations over a ceasefire in Gaza appear to have stalled, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to continue the offensive until Hamas is destroyed.
We have credible intelligence from a number of sources, including from released hostages, indicating that Hamas held hostages at the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis.
Coming up, crews are preparing to remove the back portion of the Target building following massive slip. Stay with us for a recap of news across the tri-state.
Who was your hero when you were a kid?
Neil Armstrong or Louis Armstrong?
Roberto Clemente or Walter Cronkite? Rosa Parks or Sally Ride?
You're the right age to do something you can be remembered for.
Register to become an organ and tissue donor.
Even if you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, or beyond, any age is the right age to donate the gift of life.
Learn how at organdonor.gov or call 1-866-99-DONATE. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
Welcome back to Newscenter88's Weekend Recap. I'm Emma Johnson.
And I'm John Boggess. As student government elections approach, the current administration is working on a new goal. As Luke Hamilton reports, food insecurity is on the chopping block.
You never really understand how unfortunate some people have it in terms of just like access to resources.
The Marshall Food Pantry is expanding with the help of Student Body President Walker Tatum and Vice President Kalia Yang. Yang says that the idea for the expansion stemmed from the size of the space and students who lack resources.
Currently, it is only a small space, and we want to expand it to about 3,000 square feet. And this includes moving the thrift store, which is currently in Holderby.
With the addition of the thrift store, Tatum says it will make the space more student-friendly.
But more of like a one-stop shop convenience store that's open for longer hours so that students can take advantage of it whenever they feel the need.
Food insecurity was also on the minds of student government officials when crafting the expansion plan.
And so we found that a lot of students are having only 6 to 10 meals a week, which is not good.
The pantry's student manager says that she's excited about the improvements after working closely with Marshall's student leaders.
We have the office space that we're in now, and then there's the shopping room in the other space. So we're going to have that width all the way back in the building. Right now I've got all my deep freezers are full. My other freezer's totally full. And there's so much more that I want to get that I know we'll use. But with oh my goodness, it's going to be so much better. It's going to be fantastic.
Marshall's student government will continue to fight food insecurity on campus as it waits for the Hunger-Free Campus Act to make its way through the West Virginia legislature. For Newscenter88, I'm Luke Hamilton.
Thanks, Luke. The Hunger-Free Campus Act has passed the Senate Education Committee. Next, it will need to pass the floor of the Senate and the House before getting signed by the governor.
According to a report from WSAZ, further slipping of the ground at the Barbersville Target is causing more damage to the building. Barbersville Mayor Chris Tatum says significant damage has been done to the perimeter and roadway behind the building, as well as to the building itself. Engineers and experts have been on site assessing the damage, and utility crews are monitoring the sewer system. Residents at 3 homes behind the store received voluntary evacuation notices from Target prior to the latest slip. The mayor says Target offered to cover all the relocating costs to those residents. According to the Barbersville police chief, the property manager says the current plan is to remove the back portion of the building that has been impacted by the massive slip. However, officials have not confirmed whenever that work will begin. The mayor says all other businesses in the plaza remain open and are not believed to be in any danger.
Coming up next, Trump's New York hush money case will start March 25th. It's the first of his criminal trials. Stay with us for a recap of news around the nation when Newscenter88 returns right after this.
The worldwide leader in Marshall University sports coverage.
Welcome back inside the Xfinity Center here in College Park, Maryland. Happy to have you with us on this Black Friday.
Welcome back inside Little John Coliseum's 4:48 to go in the first quarter.
Welcome back to Johnny Red Floyd Stadium.
Welcome inside the Kohl Center, everyone.
The Cutting Edge Sports Radio Network.
Welcome back to Newscenter88's Weekend Recap. I'm Emma Johnson.
And I'm John Boggess. Cleveland Cliffs is shutting down a northern West Virginia tin production facility indefinitely and plans to lay off 900 workers. The company says it will offer severance packages or opportunities for workers in Weirton to be relocated to its other facilities. The announcement Thursday follows an International Trade Commission ruling against imposing tariffs on tin imports from Canada, China, and Germany. Anti-duping and countervailing duties are levied against foreign governments that subsidize products so they can be sold below cost. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia says the plant's closing is an injustice to American workers and the principle of fair competition.
Sailors aboard the U.S. aircraft carrier Dwight D. Eisenhower and its warships have spent 4 months straight at sea, defending against ballistic missiles and flying attack drones fired by Iranian-backed Houthis. They are also defending against a new threat, fast-moving unmanned vessels that are fired at them through the water. The duration of time at sea is unusual because there have been no days off for the crew for port calls. But the commander of the Eisenhower says the ship has kept up morale by keeping its sailors connected to their families through the internet and making sure the sailors know just how important their job is.
When you compare missions that are like this, going back to the 1980s, or even going all the way back to World War II, this is the most dynamic and what I'll call weapons engagement zone activity that we've had over the last 40 to 50 years.
A New York judge says former President Donald Trump's hush money trial will go ahead as scheduled, with jury selection starting on March 25th. Judge Juan Manuel Merchant said Thursday he made the decision after speaking with the judge in Trump's now delayed federal election interference case in the nation's capital. That case, originally set for trial on March 4th, has been effectively frozen pending the outcome of Trump's appeal on the legally untested question of whether a former president enjoys immunity from prosecution for actions taken while in office. The hush money case centers on accusations that Trump sought to bury stories about extramarital affairs that arose during his 2016 presidential run.
NATO countries have to pay up. They have to pay their bills. The United States is in for $200 billion, and they're in for $25 billion.
Coming up, Julia McAndrews will be in with this week's weather forecast. And FM 88 Sports, Ben Anderson will be in with a recap of the week that was in Marshall Athletics.
Really dragging. I think I'm going to try some of those energy shots everybody's talking about.
How about trying WMUL Energy instead?
WMUL Energy? What's that?
Only the best energy you can get.
What flavors does it have?
It comes in 7 exciting flavors. Bluesberry, Jazz Pizzazz, Absolute Alternative, Resilient Rock, Ultimate Urban, Rejuvenating Gospel, and Moxie Mornings. Available everywhere WMUL FM's energy may be.
Welcome back to Newscenter88. I'm Julia McAndrews. For this week's weather forecast, it looks like Punxsutawney Phil was incorrect. Despite a week of spring-like weather, from the showers earlier this week all the way to temperatures in the 60s. But don't expect warm temperatures this weekend because Saturday sees snow flurries and lows of 23. Highs will only reach around the mid-30s. Looking on to Sunday, it will still be chilly with highs only creeping up into the 40s. As the evening continues, be sure to bundle up because lows on Sunday will hover around 20 degrees. But before you get upset about the weather, let's take a sneak peek at the forecast for next week. Here we see plenty of warmer temperatures and with highs in the 50s and lows in the 30s as we start the week. But don't worry because by Wednesday, we are looking at highs near 60. The weather word of the weekend is computer model, a system of computers which run complex physics equations on meteorological data to produce mathematical forecasts. Forecast models are first initialized with the current conditions in the atmosphere, and then through a series of complex algorithms, they model what will be happening anywhere from 12 to 180 hours from the current time. Thank you to weatherology.com for that information. That concludes this week's forecast. For Newscenter88, I'm Julia McAndrews.
Thanks, Julia. Now Ben Anderson joins us with a recap of the week that was in Marshall Athletics.
Thanks, Emma. A lot has happened in the last week in Marshall Athletics, starting off with track and field competing in its final home meet of the 2024 indoor season with the Marshall Invitational last weekend. The Thundering Herd had 13 victories throughout the two-day meet, with 3 coming in day 1 and 10 coming in day 2. The Thundering Herd was led by graduate student Parkersburg, West Virginia native Abby Herring, setting a new meet, track, and school record in the women's 5K with a time of 16 minutes and 21.9 seconds. Herring was named the Sun Belt Conference Women's Track Athlete of the Week for the second time this season for her performance, as she has now set or broken 27 school records in her Thundering Herd career. The Marshall Thundering Herd women's basketball team is back in action on Thursday in the first game of a 4-game road stretch as it traveled to Boone, North Carolina to take on the Appalachian State Mountaineers. The game would be back and forth until the fourth quarter as both teams entered the final 10 minutes tied at 59. The Thundering Herd would get on the hot hand in the final minutes, going on an 18-4 scoring run and hitting 11 of its 18 shots. Graduate student Abby Beeman would lead the way for the Thundering Herd with 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists. Marshall would end the game with 14 three-pointers and would go on to win 87-78. And on Saturday, Marshall women's basketball would defeat the Old Dominion Monarchs 89-75 to improve its record to 19-6, 13-1 league play, and stay on top of the Sun Belt Conference standings. Then the Marshall Thundering Herd men's basketball team also returned to action Thursday, taking on Appalachian State in Boone. Appalachian State would start off shooting the lights out, hitting 7 of its first 8 shots to go up by as many as 9 early, but Marshall cut the Mountaineers' lead to 31-29 at halftime. Marshall was not able to pull away in the second half, as the closest it got to slashing the Mountaineers' lead was at 49-47 following a Ryan Nutter three-pointer with 11 minutes remaining. Marshall would go cold for the rest of the half as Appalachian State would outscore Marshall in the half 42-29 and hold Marshall to 32% from the field and 38% from behind the arc, as the Mountaineers would defeat the Thundering Herd 73-58. On Saturday, Marshall would fall to the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers 74-67 and now fall to 12-15, 7-7 in league play. In Marshall women's golf, the Thundering Herd competed in the Atlantic Invitational with junior Emily McLatchie finishing as co-champion. shooting a 1 under 70 to finish the tournament at 1 under par. McAndrews finished the final day of the tournament with 5 birdies and led the field in birdies with 13 in the 3-round event. No other competitor had more than 9. As McAndrews was also the only golfer in the field to average below par on par 4 holes. McAndrews' performance was just one of the top performances for the Thundering Herd, as freshman Casey McIlvain would finish the event tied for 4th. Marshall women's basketball will be back in action on February 27th when it travels to Phoenix, Arizona for the GCU Invitational. Lastly, Marshall swimming and diving has found success throughout the week in the Sun Belt Conference Championships, as the Thundering Herd won the 800 freestyle relay, becoming its first conference championship winning relay team in program history. The Thundering Herd would also be victorious in the team diving event, defending its title from the 2023 Missouri Valley Conference Championships, besting second place Georgia Southern by over 2 points. Marshall would then see Esther LeBon take home the 500 freestyle to bring the win total to 3 through 3 days in the Sun Belt Conference Championships. This concludes the FM88 Sports Report. For FM88 Sports, I'm Ben Anderson.
That concludes this edition of Newscenter88's Weekend Recap. Tune in next week for a weekly recap of the top stories around the globe and the tri-state area. You can watch this newscast anytime on JMC TV or WMUL's radio YouTube channels.
For Julia McAndrews, Ben Anderson, Luke Hamilton, Emma Gallus, and for the entire Newscenter88 team, I'm John Boggess.
And I'm Emma Johnson. Have a great week.